So when I started thinking about making longer form videos and starting a YouTube channel, I was having a hard time figuring out where I'd want to start. I had a lot of ideas about the kinds of videos I'd want to make about asexuality and asexual experience, but I wasn't really sure where this journey in this video form would begin. But I thought about it, and it seems like the best place for me to start this channel is with my coming out story, how I discovered and came out as ace. So coming out as asexual is actually my second coming out. My first coming out happened when I was 18 years old, and I came out as gay. I grew up in South Louisiana in a town called Lafayette. If you don't know it, it's kind of the heart of Cajun country in Louisiana. And I grew up on what was basically a farm. We lived on this property with my grandparents and some cows and pigs and chickens and a vegetable farm. And I knew growing up that I wasn't like the other boys. I knew that I was into other boys. And when I turned 18 and I graduated high school, I came out to my parents and my friends and everyone around me. It was a very difficult decision to make. It was a scary decision to make, but I did it because I knew that I wanted to live the most authentic life that I could. And the way I could do that was to come out. So at 18, I had my very first coming out. I came out as gay, and I was off into the world as a young gay man in the 1990s. So once I came out, I kind of thought, well, that's it, right? Like, I declared my otherness to the world. I know who I am now. So, we're done. I was 18. I was foolish. That was a foolish thing to think. And I went about the next many years of my life being really confident in my gayness and my queerness, but also recognizing that there was still something not quite right. There was still something very different about me and the other people in my queer community. And I recognized that it had a lot to do with sex. I just knew there was something different about the way that I was experiencing and thinking and feeling about sex than other people. I kind of compare it to, like, okay, so like when there's a big show that everybody's watching, like Game of Thrones or WandaVision, and literally everyone's talking about it. Every week the episode comes out and everyone's tweeting about it. Everybody's talking about it at work. Everybody's talking about it everywhere. But you're like the one person who isn't watching the show. So you know that something big is happening, but you don't know a single thing about what they're talking about. You kind of grab bits and pieces out of the air so you can fake your way through a conversation, but you don't know anything about the dragons in Game of Thrones. You don't know what's happening or what the Red Wedding is or anything. But you pretend that you do. Well, that was really how I felt about sex, because sex to me was the same way. Everybody was tweeting about it. Everybody was talking about it. I knew that it was happening. I knew that it was going on, but I wasn't on the same page. I was missing something. I wasn't watching the same show that everybody else was watching. And I felt that way for a really long time, over 20 years of my adult life. I felt that disconnection between myself and sex, and myself and the way other people felt about sex. I didn't really have anything in the world that showed me that that was normal. I didn't have anything that I could point to in the world to show me that that was a valid way to be. So I made the only assumption that I could. I just assumed that there was something wrong with me, that I was broken somehow, that however it happened, however it came to be, somehow my sexuality was defective somehow. It was broken. I use that word a lot when I think about that time in my life, feeling broken. I mean, I had relationships, and they were moderately successful. There was always a lot of anxiety around sex stuff when it came to that, because I was aware of my brokenness, and I couldn't quite solve it so much. But eventually, I did meet somebody who let me get past that anxiety and that feeling of brokenness. I met my husband, Neil, and we've been married. I married the guy, because you marry the good ones. And we've been married for about 7 years. But, you know, even in our relationship and our marriage, which is absolutely wonderful, sex was a really tough place. It was a tough thing to talk about. It was a tough thing to kind of navigate, because it just wasn't, you know, it didn't quite work. I was still holding on to that feeling of being broken. But my husband is really helpful, because he's a little bit younger than me, and he's a millennial, and I am a dedicated Gen Xer. But as a good millennial, he was introducing me to all the cool things that all the cool kids were doing, and he introduced me to Tumblr. And I really got into Tumblr. I really dug it. I thought it was a cool platform. I had never really explored it before, but he was always on Tumblr, so I wanted to know what the story was, and I wanted to know what was the action happening over on the Tumblr. So you know, I got a lot of fun on Tumblr. I found a lot of cool, like, musical theater geeks on Tumblr, and there's a lot of really cool queer art and a lot of cool tattoo stuff that I was really into. And I was having a great time over on Tumblr. And in my exploration of the queer side of Tumblr, I kept coming across these posts about asexuality. And I knew about asexuality. You know, I knew it existed. I kind of had an idea about what it was, but I never connected it with myself, ever. And I'd read these posts and I'd go like, oh yeah, asexuality, queer community, queer connected, yeah, we're a community. But on Tumblr, I was reading more about it. I was seeing it show up in my feed, and I'd read these posts about asexuality. And I started to have these moments when I'd read them of, oh, that kind of sounds a little bit like me. And I kept having these moments over and over again where I'd be reading about something some asexual person was feeling, and I'd be reading maybe their coming out story, and I'd reading their experience with asexuality, and I'd keep feeling like, oh, that sounds like me. That's how I felt. That is how I relate to sex. That sounds like me. And I kept having these little moments, and they started to piece themselves together until they added up to this realization that, oh, so all this time that I thought I was this thing, I was actually something else. I am asexual. I am ace. And it was like the greatest gift I could have gotten. Really, learning about asexuality and making that connection in me, being able to say for the very first time, I am ace, was such a weight off my shoulders. And it made so much about my experience and so much about myself make sense. It's great to be at a point in my life now, almost 45 years old, where I feel like I really understand myself and I really get it, you know, all the parts of my experience and all the things I've been through and all the things I felt and all the things I am make sense to me now. And like, what a gift. The cool part about my coming out story, and the cool part about what's kind of happening now with my Ace Dad advice stuff over on TikTok is, you know, in this content creator world, I'm positioned as kind of the elder. You know, I'm seen as Ace Dad, and I'm, you know, the elder who's wise and knows things. But I would never be here if it weren't for young people on Tumblr. I would never be here if it weren't for the amazing young people who learned about themselves a lot earlier than I did. I learned from all of you out there. And it's one of my favorite things about this new experience of making Ace content is that I'm getting an opportunity to pay back all of the young people whose Tumblr posts I read and help me understand myself. Me getting to be someone who can provide support and provide a place of encouragement and provide some positive feedback to you as a young person. It's just a thank you for all that you all did for me when I needed someone to explain myself to me. So that's my coming out story. That's my coming out story as Ace. thanks for listening. And yeah, share about your experience in the comment. I would love to know more about how you figured out that you were ace, particularly if you are an older ace person like me, one of the ace elders who came out a little later in life. I'd love to know more about your story. Keep watching for more videos on the channel. There's going to be a lot more to come. I'm very excited about the possibilities of this channel and what I can make and what we can make together. So thank you for supporting Ace Dad Advice, and I'll see you in the next video.